Welcome, werewolves, to Gong Fu Yu, the #1 place for Gong Fu tea learning. That's hot. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Gong Fu Yu, presented by Fire and Earth Teaware. I'm your host today, Dart, and I'm really excited to get to talk to you today about storing and cleaning your teaware. Gong Fu Yu is a one-stop shop for all the basic information that you need on Gong Fu brewing that is essential as a Gong Fu tea drinker. Before we get into today's topic, though, we need to cover a few things first. So the first thing that I want to talk about is breaking your teaware. Yeah, breaking your teaware. It's inevitable. It's going to happen at some point if it hasn't happened to you already. More importantly, don't worry about breaking your teaware. Why don't you need to worry? Well, first of all, it's one of the only hobbies where you get to use art while you're doing the hobby itself. So, these beautiful teapots, I get to use this while I'm drinking tea. So, yes, it'll be unfortunate when you do break that piece of teaware, but you also need to remember not every art piece you get to actually use in a practical base in the hobby that you're in. Paintings, for example. You don't see people pulling paintings off the wall to use them. No, but we get to use them when we're brewing tea Gong Fu style every single day. So, for those of you smarties out there who are saying, Dart, just kintsugi it. It's fine. You can just add the gold. You can, but the point is to not mentally get hung up on the fact that you're not going to have it forever and not to worry about it every time you take it out or you show someone or somebody holds it or, your daughter, like in my case, drops it, right? You don't need to be scared about it because it's okay. We can mentally let it go. Yes, you can repair it for some of them. Yes, you may want to do that, but it's just the idea of being able to let go of the teaware when it's done. Okay, the second point I have is this is not Fort Knox. Neither is your house. So when you're storing your teaware, when you're putting it away, if it takes you 5 minutes to pull out your teaware, you're probably thinking about it wrong. What you really want to be doing is finding a practical way to put your teaware away or display it, right? And store it. But if it takes you 5 minutes to get it out, you're probably not going to use it. So let's stop trying to make sure that everything is perfectly safe and perfectly tight and make sure that we can actually use our teaware. One of our favorite ways to actually store a piece of teaware is just a pot and a cup in a box. And that's it. It's nice and simple. It's clean. You can do it over and over and it works. This is for all you hoarders out there. Listen to me. If you haven't used that teapot in a few months, years, or decades, depending on how long you've been drinking tea, maybe it would be best suited in the hands of someone else. I don't just mean go bring it to a thrift store or donate it or throw it out or something like that, but giving it to a friend. I'll tell you, my favorite teapots, the pots that I use and enjoy and get the most pleasure from using are the ones that have been gifted to me or that I've exchanged with someone else. Regardless of the quality of the pot itself, there's something special about the connection when you've been given a gift that's a teapot. And I'm not talking about a pot that was bought for you on Black Friday, gifted to you, and you get it brand new. No, I'm talking about when I get a teapot from a friend after they've used it in their tea practice, and then I get to use it after them. That is something truly special to me. And I know that it is for other tea drinkers as well. So, unlike other hobbies, this is one of the few hobbies where we actually appreciate a used piece of equipment from the hobby. And so, if you have that piece of teaware that's been sitting around forever that you really love, but you haven't used it, either one, take it out and start using it, and two, you need to be honest with yourself. Think about, are you going to use it? Because if you're not, if you gifted it to another tea lover, I'm sure it would have more value to them than it ever could have for you, even if you were using it, because of the connection that you have with that person when you gift them that pot that you've used. And it's generational, right? It's just being passed down to the next generation. Okay, so let's get into the main topic for today. Cleaning and storing your teaware. So it's going to be broken down into 4 different parts. So you have cleaning, storing, travel, and then seasoning a new teapot. So if you want to skip ahead, you can skip ahead to the different parts, but those are going to be the 4 different areas that we cover in today's video. First off, cleaning. So this first point is going to be astounding to new tea drinkers, and seasoned tea drinkers will probably just nod their head like, yeah, he's right. So the first thing is, do not, in any circumstances, use soap when cleaning your teapots. Now, for those of you out there who are retorting back, well, actually, you're right. You don't have to do this with every type of teaware, but it's just a general better practice to not do it for all of your teaware. So let me explain. When you're finished brewing your tea, when you're finished drinking, your tea leaves are done, it's dead, you gotta move on either for whatever reason, doesn't matter. You're gonna obviously take off your lid, empty your tea leaves, start rinsing it out, right? And then bring your water back up to a boil, right? So we're gonna use boiling water, we're not just gonna use cold water or warm water. Bring your water back up to a boil, and then rinse out the inside again with boiling water. Pour it into your pour cup, pour it into your teacups, and then you're done. So, interestingly enough, it's not just teaware that we do this with in China, okay? So, when I was living in China, I would go into the bathrooms when I first got to China, and there would be no toilet paper and no soap. And so I just thought, okay, well, I guess I have to bring my own soap and toilet paper, right? So I started doing that. I started bringing my own toilet paper, and, we'd have soap or hand sanitizer that we'd bring as well. And then I found out the toilet paper is true, you do bring your own. But secondarily, even in a lot of Chinese houses, they don't use soap. In fact, all they use is boiling water and then sometimes a disinfectant to clean their dishes. Now, I'm not a great mathematician, but I'm American. America's been around for 300 years. China has been around for several thousand years. They don't use soap when they're doing their dishes, and they have a longer life expectancy. So unless Chinese traditional medicine has some sort of miracle in it that we don't know about, maybe it's really not as important that we use soap when cleaning. Maybe it has something to do with the companies that are producing the cleaning materials, making us think that we need all these fancy... Anyway, point being, when you're using your teaware, you don't want to use any soaps on them. But there is a specific reason for that with teaware. So a stoneware teapot, like one from Yixing or Jianshui or Nixing, right? Any of these places, they're somewhat porous. And because they're somewhat porous, that soap can get into the teapot. And if that soap gets into the teapot, you could be drinking soap. Not good. You don't want to be doing it. If you're looking at glass teaware, right, like a pour cup, sure. You can rinse and wash with soap if you'd like, but just as a best practice, I clean all my teaware at the same time, and so typically I don't ever use any soap. Now again, I get it. There's some of you out there who is thinking, well, wait, but what about when I have friends over and we share and we drink with those teacups? Am I just using boiling water to clean my friends' teacups? Well, I'd say, yeah, you could, but if you really, really want to get down to the nitty-gritty of it, that is a fair point, right? Because your teapot and your pour cup are only going to be used for brewing tea. No lips are going to come into contact with it, so brewing and then just rinsing and cleaning with boiling water makes sense, right? So for those of you who do want to use soap on your actual teacups themselves, all I recommend you do is get teacups that are vitrified. They have this glass-like texture to it, right? And so they're not porous in any way. So I wouldn't use anything that's stoneware. So again, anything from Yixing, Nixing, Jianshui, Tokoname, any of those, I would not use any of those. And then even a semi-porous glaze, like anything that's Ruyao, I would also not use, because again, the reason this crackles and the reason it's soft is because it is somewhat porous. Again, very, very low amount, but still, I wouldn't use anything on there. So if you do want to use soap and you're really, really determined, make sure you get teacups that are vitrified. You can get porcelain or glass if you really, really want, or a glaze that is vitrified completely, and go that route. But just make sure you're never using soap on your teaware if it is porous in any way. Hey friends, if you like these insights to Chinese culture and tea culture, make sure you drop a like and subscribe for us. It really, really helps us to be able to make more content for you. What's another way when we're cleaning to make sure that we actually get them cleaned if we're just using boiling water? Well, really, really simple. Don't let your tea get moldy. Now, For those of you out there who are thinking, what are you talking about? I've never let my tea get moldy. Again, just like breaking your teaware, you probably just haven't been drinking enough tea yet. Because anyone who drinks tea a lot, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Let's say you start one type of tea and then a new type of tea comes in the mail, and so you're brewing it in a different pot, and then you have to go in the other room for something, and you come back and, oh, hey, I really want to try out this tea, or a friend came over. The next thing you know, you have 3 pots of tea going all at the same time. Maybe you finish 1 or 2 of them. That third one just sits out. And first it sits out for a day, and then it sits out for 3 days, and then after a week you come back and you got moldy tea. So what's one way that we can obviously circumvent that? Well, putting our teaware to sleep. Now, why do I say it like that? Because when we talk about going through the Gongfu tea practice, we talk about xingcha, right? To wake up our tea, and it's the same thing. Let's put our teaware to sleep when it's done. Make sure you rinse it out and clean it right away, and then you don't have to worry about, oh, is there any, is there mold? Is there, does it stick? You don't have to worry about that, okay? So make sure, again, you're just putting your teaware to sleep, just like in the beginning when you warm it up. At the end, you want to cool it down. You want to make sure that your tea and teaware and tea leaves and everything are all cleared out. Now, one thing to really help with this is to have a wastewater bowl. We don't see them as much in the West just because they're kind of expensive to actually get shipped over. But it's really just a giant bowl. Sometimes they're clay, sometimes they're porcelain. It really doesn't matter. You can get any bowl that you like, but it's a really, really easy way to make sure that you're keeping your pots clean. If you just have a water bowl, you can dump your tea leaves into that. In addition, a lot of times when you're drinking tea in China, you'll eat sunflower seeds with them, or you eat oranges with them, and so you can toss the sunflower seeds shells, or you can toss the orange peels into your wastewater bowl, along with, again, in China, a lot of times you end up smoking when you're at a tea house. Not me, but other people end up smoking at a tea house, and so they'll put cigarette butts, water, tea leaves, sunflower seed shells, orange peels, basically everything. It's just this little bowl that you put everything in, and then you clear it out. And so it doesn't really matter if you have any extra tea, you can dump it out. And that's another way that you can easily go through multiple steeps, right? Multiple different teas in a session if you're going to go through a long session without having to get up, is just having a wastewater bowl and then some backup water, of course, as well. So the next thing that we have is the difference between glass and basically everything else. So again, like I was saying before, if you are using anything that's porous, whether it be stoneware, whether it be a glaze that's porous, then you don't want to use soap. Glass is really your only safe bet that you can know you can always use soap with. And I just want to kind of touch base and say, if you have glass teaware, go ahead. So don't worry about that. You can go ahead and use soap if you're using it with an all glass tea set, for example. Finally, for cleaning, the last thing we really have to say on cleaning is tea stains. So if you can see on my pour cup here, I leave a generous amount of stain on my teaware. Again, this is a preference thing. Some people like to have their teaware immaculate and completely clean and perfect at all times. I like having some tea stains on my teaware as I'm drinking because, well, it shows, one, that I'm drinking it too, but it also kind of develops. So if you have several stains, you can see like the progression or like the depth of the stains. And typically they are, able to be washed off. But I really like the tea stains. I know that some people don't, but it really is a preference thing when you're cleaning them. I very, very rarely rinse off my Gongdao Bei. I use my pour cup a lot, and I typically use the same one. I don't typically switch based on what I'm drinking out of. The only time I really use other brew cups is if I'm comparing teas and I need several brew cups. But again, I really most often use my glass basic pour cup, and so it gets a lot of tea stains. So if you don't like that, sorry, man. So now that we have cleaning aside, boiling water pretty much always. Again, if you want to get into the technicalities of what you can use for soap, fine, fair enough. But let's talk about storing our teaware next, right? So how are we going to store our teaware? How do we keep our teaware safe from, well, whatever? So first off, tea cloths. Having a tea cloth is the perfect item for storing your teaware. Now, why do I say that? Why is this the perfect item for storing your teaware? Well, if you take a teapot, right, you take off the lid, you can drop the cloth over the top, put the lid back in. Another tip you can do is flip the top upside down, cover it, and then you can flip a cup and put it right on top and store it in literally anything that you want to store it in. So tea cloths are really nice for that, and then you can wrap it around the base of the pot as well. But tea cloths are really, really useful for that. Now, tea cloths are great. They're microfiber. This one actually says cha, which is tea in Chinese on it, right? But let's be honest, it's a glorified cloth. If you have an old t-shirt, you could totally turn an old t-shirt or t-shirt rag into your tea cloth or into the cloth to pack your teaware up without needing to keep any paper or any plastic or anything like that around. So again, you can use an old t-shirt, you can use an actual proper tea cloth. It's really up to you, but really you just want something soft to be able to surround it that is reusable, that's not gonna matter if it gets wet. And again, that's why the tea cloths are nice too, because you can actually wipe out the teaware as well. But again, teaware, you can use a tea cloth, you can use an old shirt, you can use absolutely anything you want, but just again, it needs to be sizable. I'd say at least maybe a foot long. This is probably a foot by a foot, right? 12 inches by 12 inches. So I mean, again, you want it to be somewhat sizable so that it has enough to go around your pot and your cup. Another thing, obviously, if you're doing your pour cup, right? If you're packing up a pour cup, what I do is I'll put the pour cup in the center, and then you can just bring the tea cloth up around the edges. So this 1 foot by 1 foot, I really like this size because you can pretty much wrap up anything like that. But again, it doesn't need to be exact. It's not an exact science here. So let's talk about how to wrap each type of teaware individually for storing. Well, the teapot, we did already talk about a little bit, but basically all you're gonna do is you're gonna remove the lid, right? You're gonna drape something over the top, flip the lid, put it back on, and then wrap around the outside. Really, really simple, okay? The next thing that we have is a brew cup, which is gonna be very similar. Again, we're gonna remove the lid, and the brew cup, so depending on the size of the container, I'll change this. Sometimes I'll leave the lid face up if it creates a tighter fit, or sometimes I will flip it over in between the tea cloth. But again, I will always put something in between this. You don't just wanna put these touching each other when they're storing. If you're taking them somewhere or just storing them up at your own house, I wouldn't leave them touching each other if at all possible. The next is teacups. Now, storing teacups is extremely satisfying because you can just keep layering them. So you take one tea cloth and you put the cup in, and then you fold it, and then you put another cup in, and then you fold it, and then you put another cup in, and you fold it, and you fold it, and you fold it, and you fold it. And next thing you know, you have a stack of like 6 or 8 teacups that you can take with you anywhere, and it's really, really nice, really, really satisfying. But again, yeah, it's really simple. You just kind of keep folding it over within the cloth, and that's really the easiest way to store your teacups. So unless you're actually going somewhere, don't store your pour cups. Don't buy a ton of pour cups. You don't need more than 2 or 3, right? Three of them if you're gonna be like comparing things side by side. And then again, go for a utility one. Go for a utility one that doesn't have a handle on it, just because they're gonna be more useful and it will match everything you have. You don't need to change the teaware or change your pour cup based on the type of teaware that you're using. Again, I use the same pour cup pretty much all the time. But I do bring that with me, and like I just showed you how to actually pack it up, I just put it together and then wrap it up like that. If you buy any teaware from Fire and Earth Teaware, it's gonna come in one of these boxes with then a box around the outside. Now, I really like these boxes because these fold up, right? They fold in, and I actually have a tea cloth in here, right? Because this is how I store things. So what's really nice about these is they're big enough for you to put a pot and a cup right in them, which I really appreciate. And again, you can use a gaiwan, it can be a brew cup, it can be a chahu, right? The traditional teapot, it doesn't matter. Either way, you're gonna use that method that I just showed you. So again, drape that tea cloth over the top, cover, grab any teacup that you want, flip it upside down, you put it in the box, and then the nice thing is we've measured them so it's really just at the top. So you're not gonna have a lot of give. So once I close this, it really doesn't move, which is really nice. So honestly, I think this is really the best way. If you haven't bought anything from us, we understand, we know you will soon. But if you haven't, again, just find a small box that you can pack things up with because it's really, really useful just to keep, your 1 cup and 1 pot. Speaking of which, let's talk about the 1 cup, 1 pot. We think this is a really, really good method for just storing your teaware in general, because if you're going to a tea party, right, if you're hosting or you have friends over, you can have several setups ready to go, right? So, for example, if you have 3 or 4 people, maybe you'll have 2 of these boxed up where it just has your 1 cup and then your 1 pot, right? And so you'll have 2 really nice cups to pull, 2 really nice pots, and then you just need a stack of cups to go with it. But you have several teapots ready to go. They're packed. They fit in a bag really nicely. So we highly recommend using this method of storing, again, 1 cup and 1 pot together. So then you kind of always have at least 2, ready to go for any given occasion, and then you can do several types of tea at once and not have to worry about, oh, where are my pots? Where's everything packed up? Boom, they're ready to go. So the next section we're going to talk about is traveling. So first off, if you've ever been to China, if you've ever been to a tea pot area in China, so if you've been to Jingdezhen, if you've been to Yixing, you'll see they use the exact same method when they're storing and packing their teapots. In fact, if you've ever bought any teaware, you might see them done this way, although probably not. They typically don't do it for storage and packing, but it's really, really good for travel. So what you do is you take a teapot, right, and then you wrap it with a rubber band, and then you twist it when it comes over the handle, you twist it when it comes over the lid, you twist it when it comes over the spout, and then you wrap it around the back. And so when you do this, when you wrap it all the way around, you create a really, really tight seal. Everything is together. It is not moving at all. Like, you'd be hard pressed to find a way to get that to move. So if you are traveling, you want to make sure, obviously, there's as little moving pieces as possible. You still could probably use the other method. I mean, when I'm going, I typically don't check my bags, especially if I have teaware in it. I'll put this in my backpack, just because I'd rather it in my backpack on me than being liable to, whatever happens in the airplane. But if you are packing it up, or you have a lot of teaware after you go to a tea festival, for example, like Toronto Tea Fest, then the rubber band method is a really, really great method. The other way for traveling that we like to kind of talk about is don't bring your nice teaware when you're traveling, right? Like, my nicest teacup, I did not bring it anywhere except from China to the US when I came back. So when I'm traveling, a lot of times you'll see me just grabbing a travel tea kit, a travel tea set. Is it the nicest teaware that I own? No, but guess what? If I break one of those, I'll be a lot less sad than if I broke one of my nicer pieces. And again, they're made for travel, right? They're designed to travel. So sometimes I like upgrading the cloth, because the cloth that travel tea sets come with is really, really thin. So sometimes I'll upgrade the tea cloth. But other than that, they're really good. They're really practical. And it's really, really useful when you're out traveling to have a travel tea set. Just get one. It just makes sense. Now, with the travel set or the regular set, you still need to make sure that you have a kettle. Again, I can't tell you how many times I found myself without a kettle traveling somewhere wanting to do tea, and I have all my teaware, all my tea, and no kettle. So I have one of the just kind of cheap silicone ones that I bought on Amazon. It's collapsible. I think it was like 30 or 40 bucks. And I bring it with me anytime I'm traveling. I bring it with me throughout the week. And so I can basically always be ready to brew tea, and it takes up like a quarter of my backpack for my teaware, my tea, and my kettle. Then the next thing, obviously, you could bring a kettle. If you don't have access to a kettle, but you do have access to hot water, you could boil water and then put it in a thermos. So that comes up to the next thing, which is making sure you have a water source. Again, it's really great if you have a kettle. It's really great if you have your tea and teaware, but if you don't have a water source, none of that matters either. So making sure that you have a water source and either boiling your water ahead of time, putting it in a really good thermos, or bringing a kettle and cold water. Either way, however you want to do it, it works. But making sure you have a water and kettle is really important. And I can't tell you the amount of times where I've thought I had everything, packed my brand new favorite tea or teaware, and didn't have a kettle or didn't have water to go with it. And then finally, of course, use your 1-in-1. Use your 1 pot, 1 cup, and a tea cloth method in a small box. It just makes it really easy to grab and know, like, this is ready to go. Like, if I can shake it and move it, I know one of the things is missing. If it's not, and I can feel that it's kind of touching the top, then I know I have a pot and a cup, and I'm ready to go. Maybe I need a pour cup, maybe I don't, and then all I need is tea and everything else to go with it. So use the 1-in-1 method. It's really good, it's really useful, and I think it'll really help you out. All right, so the last thing we're going to talk about is seasoning a new teapot. First of all, you only need to season stoneware teapots, okay? You do not need to season earthenware or porcelain pots. Second of all, I would not recommend this type of teapot for your first teapot. If you are a new tea drinker, do not buy an Yixing teapot. Buy a brew cup first, buy a Jingdezhen brew cup, buy something earthenware with a glaze, buy like the jade glaze, right, the celadon, anything else, but do not buy an Yixing teapot as your first teapot. Yes, they're amazing. Yes, they are beautiful. Yes, the crafting is amazing. They do really, really well with roasted oolongs and pu'er, but for your first teapot, you do not want it because it is not versatile. So the whole reason that you go through seasoning is to make sure, one, you're going to get the dirt off. And so this you could honestly do with any pot, any stoneware pot, whether or not you're going to season it. You can do the first step, which is going to be soak it in boiling water, but you're not going to want to do the second step. So let's get into that. So when you get a new teapot, what you're going to do is obviously you're going to take it out, you're going to unwrap it. There's probably going to be dust in it. It's going to look kind of dusty or like grainy right out of the box. And that's okay. That's okay. That's actually not a bad thing. So when this happens, you're going to want to get out a pot or a pan, right? Boil some water. And then you're going to put the teapot in. You can use a ladle or a scoop to put it in, so you can, drop it down very, very softly or gently and leave it in there to help pull it out later. And you're going to want to separate your teapot and the lid. So separate them from each other so they're not rattling around, because they will rattle around. It's okay. It's not going to break your teapot. Remember, they've been fired over 1,200 degrees most cases. So again, you're not going to break it by shaking it in the bottom of your pan or pot. So you're going to put them in the boiling water, leave them in for, I've heard recommendations of 15 minutes, 30 minutes from different professionals in China. So again, it's really up to you. Really what you're trying to do is get all that grime out of the teapot, because if you don't, it'll taste muddy. It'll taste earthy, like more earthy than it normally would. So you don't want to leave it in. You want to make sure that you boil it regardless if you're going to do the second part, which is the seasoning part, right? Then after that, you take it out, leave it to sit. And if you're going to season it, now, only season it if you're going to use one type of tea in this pot. So as far as stoneware goes, I only recommend this specifically for Yixing teapots. You can do it for Jianshui, you can do it for Chaozhou, you can do it for Qinzhou and Nixing, but the only one that I would specifically say, like, yeah, you want to do this, or like, yeah, it'll really benefit from this, is Yixing. And the reason for that is it's the most porous of the types of stoneware. So what does that mean? Well, it's going to pull the most flavor and it's going to give back the most flavor. And so it's going to lead to seasoning the best. On the spectrum, I would say, the one that does the most in terms of seasoning is probably Yixing. The one that does the least is probably Nixing or Qinzhou, because it's the most vitrified. It's the highest fired and closest to maturity. So if you're going to do it, I would really only recommend doing it with Yixing pots. And the reason is, when you do the second part, you're going to put in the tea leaves of the type of tea that you want to brew in this pot forever. And this is why I say it's not good for new tea drinkers, because as a new tea drinker, you don't want a pot that you can only brew one type of tea in. It feels restrictive. It makes it feel it's not a great feeling. So if you are going to do that, I would recommend, it's your third, fourth, fifth pot. There is a reason that people love Yixing teapots, though. They do impart this amazing flavor, and they pull the astringency out of a pu'er, and they're very, very amazing. But I just wouldn't recommend them for your first couple teapots, because for your first few teapots, you really want to make sure that they can brew anything, and you can try all different types of tea and not just be limited to one type of tea. All that being said, let's get back to going and seasoning your teapot. So again, you're going to put the teapot in the boiling water, boil it for 15 minutes to 30 minutes, pull it out, add tea leaves of the tea type of choice that you're going to use for the seasoning. Then after you've left that for another 10 to 15 minutes, put the teapot back in, allow that to boil, and you leave that to boil and then season. When you pull it out, on lighter color, like if you have like a duanyi, right, like the mixed clay from Yixing, after just 15 to 30 minutes, you'll actually see the color change of the pot. Like it already starts to permanently change just from leaving it in those leaves for 15 minutes. If you wash it, it'll still be just a little bit darker, have a little bit of a season and a patina to it right off the bat. I wouldn't recommend doing this too much more though, because again, just like everything else, you want to experience it slowly. You don't want it to just all happen at once. So I don't recommend you double seasoning or triple seasoning. Some people do, but I think really you just want to do it once to get it cleaned up, get it ready to drink with, and then, as they say in Chinese, man man lai, slowly go, right? So slowly go through things. You don't need to do it fast. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Gong Fu Yu presented by Fire and Earth Teaware. Again, if you like this video, please make sure you subscribe, like, and click that bell icon so you know next week when our next video comes out. Thank you so much from me and the rest of everyone at Fire and Earth Teaware. Until next time, see you, werewolves.